You guys go to work for a startup, you're not going to make as much money as your friends who are working in other industries. But as compensation for that, you ought to have, and you should request, stock options, so that if the company is really successful and eventually gets sold or IPOs, you'll get a slice of the pie, right? And you should get a big check. Now, in the US and the UK and pretty much every other country in the world that I've studied, when those stock options are granted, and then you get that big check, if it really works out, that big check is treated as capital gains, long-term capital gains, as if you bought some IBM stock and just held on to it for over a year. You pay a much lower rate of tax, usually half than if you paid if it was income. And in Ireland, for some reason, it has the worst stock options taxation scheme of any country that I've ever seen in the world. And there was absolutely no economic reason for it, because my argument is that actually the tax on stock options should be zero. And the reason is that that would incentivize tons more people to go and work for startups and tons more startups to be able to attract people. And therefore, its net impact on the economy would probably be zero.
Are you saying that that's a deterrent for a company like yours?
No, so it's not a huge deterrent for us because we have people all over the world. But if I wanted to bring somebody from California, for example, when we have somebody in Silicon Valley, and I want to say, you relocate to Dublin, okay, there would be a number of issues with that. When we got to the compensation side, they would say, wait a minute, this is crazy. You got to double my stock option package because it's not what I'm used to before. So what it results in is I think less equity being granted to Ireland, and less enjoyment of that equity, and less appreciation for stock options as not just a piece of paper, but like when people get that in Silicon Valley, they think, wow, the guy who basically I went to school with bought a house with that, or a boat, or a car, or whatever it is. So anyway, I think that it's something that could attract more talent and generally help the ecosystem grow.
I heard you holding your mind there. Do you want to say something?
Oh, no. I don't know the complete range, but
I mean, there's a lot.
So there's this amazing tax relief program. So in 2000, so that may change in the upcoming budget. Yeah. So in 2012, as the budget was being unveiled, I came across this thing called SARP. SARP is the Special Assignee Relief Program. And so lo and behold, I kind of read down through the fine details, fine print, and I'm like, wow, if you bring a highly skilled executive to come and work in Ireland that's not Irish, and he or she receives a salary of more than, I think it's 75,000 euros a year, and you don't pay the higher rate of PAYE on that employee, at the time up to 500,000, now it's totally uncapped. So you want to bring an amazing executive from Google and Mountain View to Ireland to work for your company, you can do that, and it's massively incentivized. There's like a tax break. So I rang up KPMG and I was like, wow, this SARP thing is amazing. And they're like, oh, whoa, SARP. No, that doesn't apply to Irish companies. That was lobbied for by the American Chamber of Commerce. They put that, you can only do that if you're a multinational in Ireland. And I'm like, what the fuck? So if I bring a highly skilled executive from England to Ireland, and he's working, or she is working for me, an American company can hire that person, move them across the street in Ireland and pay a lower rate of PAYE, that is fucking mental. So yeah, this is more shit like that. So I would deeply hope that our absolute obsession and complete addiction to cheap, it's not American petrodollars, but American tax dollars, we move to a position where we have a more balanced economy. When people say, oh, China's a really important export market for Ireland, our exports have grown substantially over the last decade to China, let's do a trade mission to China. You're like, okay, that makes total sense. So why don't I go to the CSO and check out what percentage of our exports to China last year originated from Irish companies? Does anybody have any idea? It was 5.5% of all exports to China last year came from Irish companies. It gives you kind of a sense for how, I'm obviously very pro-Irish startups, by the way, if you're not getting this at this point. But there is, you know, please go and work for an Irish startup. Please go and build a great company here. And, you know, if you're going to leave, please think about coming back. In the years ahead, and take all that experience from abroad and apply it to building some great Irish companies, because the one thing this country is really lacking is more great companies that scale and have global ambition and go and do incredible things. And I think that's possible. There is enough talent. We always see statistics suggest there's an incredible amount of talent in Ireland. It's just underutilized. So go and put it to work.
Okay, I think we've time for maybe one or two more questions. One, yeah, very back, yeah.
Do you think we're in a tech bubble? Question to you, do you think startups should go the lean startup approach, right?
So you can both take that question.
Yeah, startup bubble, and do you think it should be a lean startup approach?
So nobody knows if they're in a bubble until the bubbles burst. That's kind of generally the rule, and it's very, very difficult. Secondly, what's called startups is now so diversified across every sector in the economy that I believe that you can two things can occur independent of each other. So first of all, the more likely scenario is that you have bubbles in particular sectors. So you could take gaming a few years ago, everybody was massively bullish on it, and over the last 3 years you've seen a few companies, Zynga, Angry Birds, which is called Rovio. These guys are all struggling and their valuations are kind of plummeting. So gaming has been is going through a winter right now. So the bubbles burst. But then you've got other sectors that are suddenly all of a sudden incredibly hot. And I think you're going to see more of that pattern. Whether we're in a gigantic kind of meta bubble, I'm not too sure. I don't know. Jay might have views on that.
So yeah, so I think, you know, I had a conversation with a very prominent Silicon Valley venture capitalist about this a couple of years ago, and his view was, of course, and I guess that would be kind of my response as well, is that, you know, nobody knows if you're in a bubble until you're in it. That's true in a sense, but actually, if you start to look at what some of the valuations are for younger companies that are just coming out of places like Y Combinator, et cetera, and then you look at what late-stage companies are actually getting valued at as kind of just really like you know, in terms of just core metrics, right? If they're marketplace businesses, they're probably worth, you know, 1x GMV or, you know, whatever it is, that the particular metrics for the particular type of business that it is. You know, when things get slightly, you know, way out of whack, they correct themselves eventually, because eventually the companies have to go public or get bought. And if there's no way to buy them, they have to go public. And when they go public, all the information about the company and its, you know, financials have to be revealed, and generally that's an unpleasant process. And so we haven't seen this kind of rush of IPOs, which actually I think is a scary thing, because there's really high value companies out there that are not, they're illegal. You know, they can't actually realize the value that they've created. The question is, will they be able to? And I think not at all. But, you know, how does that apply to you? And you have a very good question about the lean startup model. Whether you're in a bubble or not, you know, I tend to think you should always act as if you are. Obviously, if you can get money at higher valuations that is not ridiculous, then you should take it. But, you know, you should always plan to try and get things, you know, not take more money than you need necessarily, but take about as much money as you think you need for each particular step in the game, so that no matter what conditions you're going to find in the outside world, you're going to be able to make it to the next financing or the next step in your plan. And the lean startup model, I think, is a very good model for making sure that you're doing everything that you can to maximize the cash that you have. You know, so for us, we're using people's houses as offices. We use distributed tools to talk to each other. You know, in our teams around the world, and basically, you know, we run a pretty tight ship in terms of, you know, expenses and outgoings and things like that. I just, you know, that should become second nature and stay even when you do get some success.
So maybe one more question, yeah, gentleman there in the glasses.
When you're hiring for like graduates for your company, what do you talk about, like, from how do you sound like from the rest of the
So for graduates who want to apply to the graduate program, how do you stand out
How do you stand out from the rest? Yeah, so I was just, we were in DCU before this, and it was a question that people asked, a few people asked in different ways. So, you know, over the last year, I don't know, slightly more, slightly less, we've had about 10,000 applications, mostly for graduate level positions, are kind of, you know, up to, they're kind of generally, the age cohort would be up to maybe 26 or 27. What helps you to stand out? I mean, it's a given that most people go to, vast majority of people go to university, vast majority of people get a good degree. So after that, it's getting to the interview. So what makes a recruiter that works for us see something on your CV? Well, there's two funnels. So one is, if you're quite technical, so some of the guys from the data science team, Fiona and Stephen, are kind of at the back of the room. You know, if you've got the technical chops, you've done something like physics or maths or engineering, that's you know, that's a specific kind of route, and what matters more there than anything else is two things: is one, academics, and then two, your appetite to learn. Because the reality inside any company is we're always learning. There's lots of things we don't know, and literally every day you're just trying to figure and solve for different challenges that come up. And if you're somebody who thinks, oh well, I've done my degree, I know everything, that's just kind of not going to work. So then, if you're on the other route and you've done a more kind of arts type degree, which a lot of the graduates in our company have done, it's then more, it is, I'll be totally honest, slightly more difficult. So what's going to make you kind of stand out is, what have you done outside of the lecture hall? And I think that really matters, because you're going to be working, you know, primarily as part of a team. So have you been involved in a society or a student publication or a sports club or something outside of university? Have you done, you know, what have you done that just kind of makes you kind of stand out in some way? I mean, people have done wild things that we've hired. They've made, you know, weird websites and kind of sent them to us with all kind of Easter eggs inside them that we use, and they're kind of cool, and everybody talks about it. And that person gets an interview, and yeah, it just depends. If you want a job with another company, I would advise just going to. You could volunteer for the Web Summit and go and just meet all the Irish companies there. I mean, there's literally thousands of startups, and they're all hungry for ambitious, talented people to work for them, whether it's in Dublin or anywhere else in the world. And that's just a gift. If you want to go to San Francisco, or you want to go to Melbourne, or you want to go to Moscow, you'll find companies from all of those places and more. So that's also a great and easy way to stand out.
Okay, listen, I'll take one very last question.
How would you handle something like copyright?
So how would you handle stuff like copyright and legal issues in startups?
Well, so I think you should spend as little time and money on those things as possible. Because, frankly, there are so many other things to do. You know, if you do a financing, you know, if you can do it nowadays without a lawyer, with a very cheap lawyer. Y Combinator publishes its documentation, which, you know, can be kind of easily adapted, or there's plenty of other templates out there, or just, you know, if you're going to raise the money, getting a lawyer to do it at a cheap price is not a big deal. With regard to copyright and trademark and patent and all the IP stuff, this should be your least concern. And let me tell you the reason why. It's because no investor will ever say, oh wow, you've got a patent pending that may or may not be granted in 5 to 10 years, and so I'm going to invest in your company because nobody else can do it, or you can sue them if you're still around in 5 to 10 years. It's just not a defensible position to be in. And, you know, any of the other intellectual property things you can always add later on. So I would say, get the business running, get the product in the marketplace, get people using the product and loving the product, and then as that happens, if you get more money in a Series A, then say part of Series A is going to be used to get it in an intellectual property lawyer to start doing these things that you need.
Okay, listen, I'm going to wrap it up there. I think that Paddy and Jay are going to be around for a little while if you want to, and I know Paddy's team up there at the Web Summit will be around as well. So do you want to hand it over to you?
Yeah, no, I'll just take it over. Thank you so much. So what's going to happen now is Matthew, our secretary, is actually going to bring Paddy, Adrian, and Ray back to the council room for just a few minutes. So if everyone could stay seated, well, no, actually, if everyone could stand and give them a round of applause.